Chapter 1 of Audrey Craven. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine. Audrey Craven by May Sinclair. Chapter 1. Everybody knew that Miss Audrey Craven was the original of Laura, the heroine of Langley Wyndham's masterpiece. She first attracted the attention of that student of human nature at Oxford, at a dinner given by her guardian, the Dean of St. Benedict's, ostensibly in honor of the new master of Lazarus, in reality for his ward's entertainment and instruction in the bewildering art of life. It was thunder weather. Out of doors a hot and sleepy air hung over the city. Indoors the forecast was no less heavy and depressing. Not so, however, to Miss Audrey Craven. The party was large and mixed, and to the fresh untutored mind of a tyro this in itself was promising. The Dean pursued the ruinous policy of being all things to all men, and tonight, together with nonentities and Oxonians of European renown, there was a sprinkling of celebrities from the outside world. Among these were Mr. Langley Wyndham, the eminent novelist, and his friend Mr. Percival Knowles, the critic who had helped him to his eminence. Having collected these discordant elements around him, the Dean withdrew from the unequal contest and hovered, smiling ineffectually, on the outskirts of his little chaos. Perhaps he tried to find comfort in a conscience satisfied for a party spoiled. But for Audrey this wild confusion was rich in possibility. However baffling to those officially responsible, it offered a wider field for individual enterprise. And if she did not possess that fine flow of animal spirits which sometimes supports lesser minds under such circumstances, she had other qualities which stood her in good stead. Conspicuous amongst these was an indomitable moral courage. She prepared to hurl herself into the breach. Wyndham was standing a little apart from the herd, leaning against the wall as if overcome by an atmosphere too oppressive for endurance, when he saw his friend approaching him. Knowles was looking about him with eyes alert, and that furtive but uncontrollable smile which made ladies say, "Yes, but Mr. Knowles is so dreadfully cynical, you know." "By the way, Wyndham, I don't want to startle you, but there is a lady here who particularly wants me to introduce you to her." Wyndham turned on him a look terrible in its dignified reproach. "Anything but that, my dear fellow. No more introductions to night, please. I've just suffered torture from an unspeakable youth from Aberdeen who expected me to rejoice with him because Oxford is at last recognizing the existence of a metaphysical principle in the world and man. Ah, I admit that the party is dull from a mere worldling's point of view. But it's a glorious field for the student of human nature. And here's an opportunity for exceptional research, something quite off the beaten track. The admirer of you and all your works is the lovely Miss Craven, and I assure you she's creating a sensation at the other end of the room." "Which is she?" "There, the girl with the copper coloured hair talking to Broadbent." "Ah, that one. No, thanks. I know what you're going to tell me. She writes." "She doesn't, but she's pretty enough to do that or anything else she chooses. Scandal says she's looking for a religion. She must be a simple soul if she thinks she can pick up the article in Oxford." "Oh, I don't know. Religions are cheap everywhere nowadays, the supply being so remarkably in excess of the demand. And Miss Craven's soul may be immortal we'll give it the benefit of the doubt but its simplicity is un grand peut-être." "What's the matter?" "It makes me ill to see the way these fellows go about leading captive silly women. Do look at Broadbent cramming his spiritual pabulum into that girl's mouth. Moral platitudes. All the old crusts he can lay his hands on, soaked in the milk and water of sentiment." "And a little new wine, with the alcohol extracted by the latest process. No possible risk of injury to the bottles. Don't be uneasy. I've been watching her all evening, ever since I found her in a corner with the unspeakable youth, talking transcendentalism. A woman who can look you in the face and ask you if you have ever doubted your own existence, and if it isn't a very weird and unaccountable sensation, would be capable of anything. 5 minutes afterwards she was complimenting Flaxman Reed on the splendid logic of the Roman faith. and now I've no doubt she's contributing valuable material to Broadbent's great work on the Fourth Gospel." He was wrong. At that moment the earnest seeker after truth was gazing abstractedly in his direction, and had left the canon lecturing to empty benches, balancing himself on his toes, while he defined his theological position with convincing emphasis of finger and thumb. What he said is neither here nor there. Then Wyndham repented of his rudeness. He waited till Knowles was looking another way, and made for the Dean in a bee line, approaching him from the rear to find him introducing a late arrival to his niece. He heard the name Mr. Jackson, and noted the faint shade of annoyance on the girl's face, as the interloper sat down beside her with a smile of dreamy content. It was enough to quench Wyndham's languid ardour. He was not going to take any more trouble to get an introduction to Miss Audrey Craven. He saw her once more that evening as he turned to take leave of his host. She was still sitting beside Mr. Jackson, and Wyndham watched them furtively. Mr. Jackson was a heavy, flaxen haired young man with a large eye glass and no profile to speak of. To judge by Miss Craven's expression, his conversation was not very interesting, though he was evidently exerting himself to give it a humorous turn. Wyndham smiled in spite of himself. "Hard lines, wasn't it?" said Knowles at his elbow. "Brilliant idea of the Dean's, though. Introduce the biggest bore in the county to the prettiest girl in the room." The unconscious Mr. Jackson burst into laughter, and Audrey raised her eyebrows. She looked from Mr. Jackson to Wyndham, and from Wyndham to Mr. Jackson, and laughed a low musical laugh without any humour in it, which echoed unmusically in the memory. Wyndham turned abruptly away, and Audrey looked after him as he turned. Her face was that of one who sees her last hope disappearing. Poor Audrey! Who would not have pitied her? After hovering all evening on the verge of an introduction to his eminent, it was hard to bear the irony of this decline, unsustained by any sense of its comedy. He had avoided her in the most marked manner, but all the same she wondered whether he was thinking about her, and if so, what he was thinking. What he thought that night, and the next after that, was something like this: "My dear lady, you think yourself remarkably clever, but really there is nothing striking about you except the colour of your hair. Biggest bore in the county. Prettiest girl in the room? If it weren't for your prettiness well, as yet that may have saved you from being a bore." After that he laughed whenever he caught himself trying to piece together the image which his memory persistently presented to him in fragments. Now an oval face tinged with a childlike bloom; now grey eyes ringed with black under dark eyebrows and lashes; or a little Roman nose with a sensitive tip; or a mouth that to the best of his recollection curled up at the corners, making a perpetual dimple in each cheek. They were frivolous details, but for weeks he carried them about with him along with his more valuable property. End of Chapter 1. Recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine.